Good afternoon. This is JC, St. Louis's oldest living hippie, and I'm here to tell you about some legal thoughts with respect to J.D. Vance and Pam Bondi and Donald Trump, and how the Trump administration may decide to disobey the courts, which I argued that the Democrats should do that with respect to the 14th Amendment, but the Democrats don't have enough balls to do it. But the Republicans now are going to show that they got the balls. And in doing so, we as a nation are going to lose huge-handedly. Thank you, you dumbass Democrats. And I'm a Democrat, and I can't believe you're a bunch of wussy pussies. You won't stand up and disobey the law and say, fuck you, we're not going to put them on the ballot because of the 14th Amendment. You all back down like a bunch of cowards that you are. And now J.D. Vance and Pam Bondi may just end up being the ones who screw us over by disobeying all the courts, including the Supreme Court. I want you to listen to this. This is from MSNBC.
Justice, former communications director for Senator Ted Kennedy, and an MSNBC political analyst. And Ankush Kadori, former federal prosecutor and senior writer with Politico magazine. Gentlemen, thank you both very much for coming back to the Sunday show. So forget about what President Trump had to say in that soundbite. What's more outrageous is what Vice President J.D. Vance had to say in reaction to these judges coming through and saying, there's an injunction on this, that's on hold, whatever. And here we have it on the screen. If a judge tried to tell a general how to conduct a military operation, that would be illegal. If a judge tried to command the attorney general in how to use her discretion as a prosecutor, that's also illegal. Judges aren't allowed to control the executive's legitimate power. Ankush, you are a former federal prosecutor. I'm not. I'm not even a lawyer. But even I know that I can't even say the word on television or I'd get fired. But that's not true.
It is not. It is a vast oversimplification and very tendentious. The thing that judges and the judiciary branch are supposed to do in our constitutional system is interpret the law and apply the law, including determining what the scope of executive authority is when that question is contested. So it's a very facile tweet. It is disturbing, though, because we seem to be one step away from this administration saying that they will defy a court order. And if we get there, that is going to be a legitimate constitutional crisis. I know there's a debate about whether we're already there, but it will be undeniable if they actually flaunt a court order. And J.D. Vance's comments like that, they're not new for him, but they're very disconcerting.
But I mean, to me, what he's talking about, that's checks and balances.
Right.
He's saying that the checks and balances put in place by the founding fathers don't amount to anything.
What's also disturbing, you're 1,000% right. What is also disturbing is that our nation's chief law enforcement officer, the Attorney General of the United States, is herself an election denier, right? If you, and I bring this up, and this is going to make sense, just bear with me for 15 seconds. So November 2020, she was on the ground in Pennsylvania talking about fake ballots and mass cheating that did not exist. This is at the same time when people around Donald Trump were talking, his chief of staff, his campaign manager, his own Department of Justice was telling him that that he had lost the election. Mm-hmm. And so there was one person, one prominent lawyer, in addition to Rudy Giuliani, who was on the ground embracing these false claims of election. Her name was Pam Bondi, and now she's our nation's chief law enforcement officer. And I make this point because what makes a good attorney general, Jonathan, you have to not just have a decent resume, you have to have sound judgment, you have to have independence, and you have got to be able to accept the rulings of courts, even when you disagree with them. And she didn't do that.
Mm-hmm. And I'm just wondering, Ankush and Anthony, you still know people who work at DOJ, just the mood inside the building that not only do they have an election denier as the chief law enforcement officer of the United States, but now the vice president of the United States basically saying checks and balances, who cares?
Well, look, I think every legal observer, including Justice Department lawyers who are paying close attention, they have to be bothered by this. Mm-hmm. They have to be seriously bothered by this and concerned by it. I think the mood at DOJ, particularly since Bondi, took office last week, it's tense, right? cautiously, maybe a little optimistic that things won't be as bad as the worst fears. But she issued a series of memos, on her first day or two, some of which were sort of conventional, others of which were pushed things quite far. She's effectively shutting down certain prosecutorial functions in certain offices. And I think we could see more of that. And those sorts of internal structural decisions have a very significant impact on the employees.
I think the Supreme Court, Chief Justice John Roberts is also paying attention to this particular tweet from J.D. Vance. And I'm not saying that he is normally following the tweets of a vice president of the United States, but he saw this coming, the Chief Justice did. Back in December, he issued his end-of-year report where he warned every people of all parties of the necessity of holding themselves to the rulings of courts, even when people disagree with them. And he outlined over decades how administrations of all parties have disagreed with Supreme Court rulings, but still abided by them. So I think he's probably paying attention to this important development tonight as well.
Well, that gave me a little sparkle of hope here that if things bubble up to the Supreme Court, that Chief Justice that the court will do the right thing. But I am also mindful that the Chief Justice is one of 9 in a 6-3 super conservative.
From your mouth to God's ears.
Court, but real quick.
Yeah, well, as I said, I'm not worried about them disobeying the Supreme Court because the Supreme Court is extremely favorable to them. And this is the most favorable Supreme Court they could possibly have gotten their hands on. I'm concerned about them disobeying the lower courts, pending potential appeals to the Supreme Court because they don't like what the lower courts have to say and disagree.
And the damage could, even while you're trying to make your way through, damage could be done.
Yeah, I mean, strategically, they should not disobey a Supreme Court ruling because the Supreme Court is extremely favorable for them.
Right. But by the time you get to the Supreme Court, so much has happened in the interim. Don't go anywhere. Anthony and Ankush will be.
This is not a scam. The health food allowance card is available.
Well, there you go. That's showing you just how different Democrats and Republicans are. Republicans will do what they want no matter what, and Democrats are such wussies. They won't do what they should do when they need to do it. And it just pisses me off. Since that's my party, I'm a Democrat, it just pisses me to hell and back that they wouldn't stand up for the 14th Amendment and disobey the Supreme Court, which they should have done. So I think that Trump's going to do this. It will happen. It's not just if, but when. So fuck you, Donald Trump. Fuck you, Pam Bondi. Fuck you, J.D. Vance. This is JC, St. Louis' oldest living hippie, saying, "Pox some more, Jack. Keep on trucking."